Hot kiss. Why do Bedouins touch their tongue to red-hot iron? Can you expose a liar using dry rice? And what form of execution was the most popular in the Middle Ages? The bewitched dictator. Who attempted to assassinate Francisco Franco? How did the Spanish dictator die? And why did the family of the deceased politician oppose his exhumation? Kolya shakes and shoots. How and why did gunsmiths combine a pistol with a bayonet? What are the advantages and disadvantages of firearm blades? And what does the unique revolver of the French Apache gang look like? Archaeologists from Milan University made a grim discovery during their excavations at the Piazza San Ambrogio. They uncovered a medieval burial site, and upon examining one of the skeletons, they found evidence of horrific trauma. The remains belonged to a young man, estimated to be around 20 years old, and the scientists concluded that he had met a gruesome end through a form of torture known as breaking on the wheel. This brutal punishment involved nailing the victim to a wheel, shattering their limbs with heavy instruments, and ultimately beheading them. Such a fate was reserved for those accused of spreading the plague in medieval Italy. It is astonishing to think that public executions have not entirely disappeared, even in modern times. During the recent excavations at Piazza San Ambrogio in Milan, archaeologists unearthed 7 skeletons. These individuals are believed to have been executed approximately 600 years ago, during a time when the plague ravaged northern Italy. Those who broke sanitary regulations faced harsh consequences. They were either hanged or subjected to the brutal wheel. The belief was that only through strict discipline could the plague be controlled, and those who defied these rules were dealt with severely. In the Middle Ages, breaking on the wheel was the most common form of execution. The condemned individual's bones were broken in multiple places using a wooden mallet. They were then tied to a wheel which was raised on a pole. Death would come through dehydration, shock from the intense pain, or severe blood loss. If the bone fractures were open, it was considered a sign of incompetence on the executioner's part, as the victim would die too quickly. Each culture had its own unique twist on this gruesome punishment. The Germanic people, for example, attached a knife to the wheel, crushing the victim beneath it. The use of the wheel as a spectacle of torture and execution was not limited to Italy. It was a common practice across various nations. Archaeologists from Tel Aviv University recently studied skeletons from a 7th century BCE Syrian burial site. Their research indicated that the individuals had been tortured before being executed, and this cruel treatment was not unique to Syria. Similar practices were observed in ancient China, Rome, and even in Russia, with each civilization putting its own spin on the execution methods, often influenced by their unique aesthetics and artistic visions. Even in the present day, torture persists in certain societies. The Aida tribe in Egypt, for instance, still practices a tradition called bisha, which is used to identify liars. An individual wishing to prove their honesty must touch their tongue to a scorching hot metal object. They then show their tongue to the tribal elder, and the severity of the burn is believed to indicate the truthfulness of their words. Such practices are often found in underdeveloped societies and primitive states where a civilized judicial system is lacking. The ritual of bisha is now only employed in extreme cases, when neither the accused nor the accuser can produce witnesses for their claims. It is a tradition deeply rooted in their culture and one that is unlikely to be completely eradicated. While developed nations strive to ban or at least conceal such torturous methods, remnants of these practices can still be found. For example, in ancient China, a suspected criminal would have rice poured into their mouth. If it remained dry, they were considered guilty. This verdict was based on the idea that a guilty person would be nervous, causing their mouth to dry, while a calm and innocent individual would produce saliva, keeping the rice moist. Similar methods of torture, relying on the intricate connection between psychological and physiological processes, have been employed in various cultures. In India, for instance, defendants would strike a gong while answering the judge's questions. A consistent sound was expected, and if the accused struck the gong with excessive force, it was taken as a sign of dishonesty. These practices, though differing in their specifics, all stem from the belief in this intricate relationship between mind and body. The reburial of the military dictator Francisco Franco became a significant event in Spain's recent history. He came to power in 1939 and ruled the country for 36 years. On October 24, 2019, Franco's body was moved from the Valley of the Fallen mausoleum to a family crypt in the El Pardo cemetery, located near Madrid. The remains of the ruler were transported to the burial site by helicopter, fearing potential acts of sabotage. Even 45 years after his death, Franco's figure, who supported Hitler and Mussolini, continues to divide Spanish society. Some view him as a reformer who kept Spain out of World War II and brought economic prosperity, while others label him a tyrant and a butcher. Who attempted to assassinate Francisco Franco? How did the Spanish dictator meet his end? And why did his family oppose his exhumation? The Minister of Justice, a criminologist expert, and Franco's relatives were present during the exhumation of the Spanish dictator's body. Videography inside the temple was prohibited. From the memorial complex of the Valley of the Fallen to the El Prado cemetery, Franco's remains were transported by military helicopter to avoid possible provocations. Spanish society remains deeply divided, almost evenly split. Half consider Franco a hero, while the other half sees him as a decidedly negative figure. It is a similar situation to that in Chile, where passions still rage over the figure of General Pinochet. Francisco Franco became a general at just 34 years old. He built an impressive career during his service in the Spanish enclave of Morocco, where he fought rebels for many years. Spanish military officers who sought to overthrow the government chose him as their leader. According to legend, the Civil War began with the code phrase, "Clear skies over all of Spain." This radio message signaled the start of the coup d'etat. Franco received support from the fascist regimes of Germany and Italy. Although he was not officially involved, he supplied military personnel under the guise of volunteers, along with equipment and weaponry. On the other hand, Hitler's Germany, emerging from the Weimar Republic, was testing the strength of its newly formed Wehrmacht, while fascist Italy pursued its ambitious plans. The bloody civil war lasted over 3 years, with significant casualties on both sides. During the Civil War, Francisco Franco became the generalissimo and took the title Caudillo, meaning leader. He fought his enemies mercilessly, even ordering the execution of his own cousin. The military dictator preferred to sign death warrants in the morning over a cup of coffee and donuts. After Franco's victory, 500,000 people left Spain, and another million ended up in prisons and concentration camps. However, the repression soon slowed down, and after World War II, it virtually came to a halt. In a nutshell, Franco was a stickler. He was a man who came to absolute power through military victory and wanted the country to live by a set of laws he understood. It is crucial to emphasize that they were his laws. Despite the apparent condemnation of his dictatorship, many people still support it, and it was not as brutal as that of Nazi Germany. Franco's regime, though considered pro-fascist, did not face the Nuremberg Tribunal after the defeat of Nazi Germany. During World War II, Franco engaged in a delicate diplomatic game with his dangerous allies, Hitler and Mussolini. Spain maintained neutrality, providing only symbolic assistance to the Third Reich. Only one so-called Blue Division was sent to the front, officially consisting of volunteers. In reality, Franco used this division to solve another internal problem. He sent the most, let's say, radical phalangists who could pose a threat within the country, demanding the continuation of the revolution. On the one hand, he seemingly fulfilled his alliance obligations to the Axis powers by sending them to the Eastern Front, knowing full well that not all would return. Even during his service in Morocco, Franco was known as Hexed. He was injured only once in several years. The dictator in power faced multiple assassination attempts. There is an unconfirmed version that Stalin personally ordered his liquidation during the Civil War. A British agent, Kim Philby, was recruited as the executor and worked in Spain as a special correspondent for the Times. Eliminating Franco would have given the Soviet Union a better chance of winning the Civil War in Spain, so the very fact of planning such an operation and even discussing it seems logical, as almost everything depended on Franco. Many in Spain wanted to kill the uniformed butcher. Catalan anarchists opened the hunt for the dictator. In the late 1940s, they developed a plan that could have been straight out of a spy movie. They purchased a sports plane, loaded it with several aerial bombs, and intended to drop them on Franco's yacht during a boat race competition. The anarchists either bought or chartered the plane and planned to bomb his yacht. However, the population already had a positive attitude towards him, and his yacht was surrounded by other ships. The anarchists, in their subjective honesty, could not bring themselves to kill others to eliminate Franco. They also planned to blow up Franco's car with 20 kilograms of plastic explosives planted on the roadside near the Caudillo's summer residence. However, his car never appeared that day. The bomb was destroyed by the anti-regime fighters themselves to avoid harming anyone. In 1964, terrorists attempted to bomb Franco during a football match. The perpetrator, a minor anarchist from Scotland, arrived a month late with the explosives. He was arrested and sentenced to 30 years in prison. By that time, he was an elderly man. Assassination attempts on Franco sharply decreased after 1967, with no further attempts made. Francisco Franco died of a long illness in his bed in 1975, having ruled as the sole leader for almost 40 years. In the 1960s, Spain entered the top 10 most developed countries in the world. He supported successful economic reforms, established relations with the Vatican, and earned the nickname God's Minister from journalists. He chose Prince Juan Carlos as his successor, understanding that it would mean a sharp change in political direction. Tyrant, butcher, fascist, father of the nation, and great reformer, these are just some of the labels associated with Francisco Franco. Spaniards have yet to reach a unified opinion about him, even 40 years after his death. The rusty revolver, believed to be the very weapon used by the Dutch artist Vincent van Gogh to take his own life, has been sold at a Paris auction for 162,000 euros. This pistol, weathered by time, had been kept by the family who purchased Van Gogh's house. The caliber and age of the weapon provide evidence that it was indeed this revolver that the mentally troubled artist used to end his life. What sets vintage revolvers apart from their modern counterparts? Who invented bayonet pistols and for what purpose? What weapon did the notorious Parisian gang of the early 20th century favor? And what pistol became the prized possession of the Wild West shooter, Buffalo Bill? Alex Cranmer, an expert in antique weaponry, tests a 16th century sword pistol. The blade, with an integrated .22 caliber barrel, was used by French and German hunters to finish off wounded animals. Imagine a wounded boar as the target. On the count of 3, fire. If the animal does not succumb and attempts to flee, open fire. This hunting invention was later adopted by military forces. French musketeers attached bayonets to their gun barrels, creating a spear-like weapon. This was used in close combat and to repel cavalry attacks. The reason for this adaptation was the lengthy reloading process required before the development of the unitary cartridge. After firing a pistol, for instance, it could not be readied for combat immediately, yet sometimes action had to be continued. Thus, the blade protruding from the pistol provided some means of self-defense. Until the end of the 19th century, pistols with integrated blades were standard issue in almost all armies across Europe and the USA. Gun factories produced barrels combined with sabers, broadswords, knives, and even axes. However, these cutting and thrusting pistols had their drawbacks, including complex construction and cumbersome use. When combining a pistol with a knife or bayonet, the handle had to be designed to accommodate both functions comfortably. Instead, the resulting handle was curved, making it awkward to cut or thrust, and insufficiently curved in the pistol style to shoot effectively. In the hands of weapons expert Jan McCullum is the combined revolver APAG. Masters from the Belgian city of Liège combine 3 weapons in one. There is a folding knife, a heavy brass knuckle in the handle, and the revolver itself. The barrels are integrated into the drum's channels. This revolver was the weapon of choice for the famous Parisian gang, the Apaches. The group operated at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries and named their community after the warlike Apache Indians, hence the name of the pistol itself. The Palisade pistol was invented in Sweden in the mid-19th century and was used to arm prison guards. It was designed for 2 charges, had a blade of around 30 centimeters, and weighed approximately 1.5 kilograms. Around 500 were made, but a few made their way across the Atlantic by chance. One such Palisade knife found its way into the collection of the renowned Buffalo Bill. In these frames, a Special Forces soldier fires an NRS-2. The shooting scout's knife was developed in the Soviet Union. The design proved successful, and the firearm blade is still used in some special units today. A single-shot mechanism firing silent cartridges is embedded in the handle. The firing range is up to 25 meters. What do you think about it? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your opinion is very important to me. Don't forget to give me a like if you liked it and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new episodes. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.